4, we are live. Hello Facebook, hello world. Welcome everyone to this Zero Waste Leeds special Q&A event. It's part of their Leeds Fashion Futures Week that they are running with the RSA. Of course, it's part of the project looking at how we can make our city more sustainable when it comes to our clothes. Now, tonight, we have a really fab panel of experts, of sewers, menders, makers, designers, teachers and textile practitioners, blimey, here for the next hour to answer any questions that you might have, and they're going to share their top tips. They're also maybe going to show you some stuff, so hopefully it's going to be really practical too. We've had some questions sent in advance which we'll go through, but of course this event is open to all of you watching now at home, so get chatting, join us, ask your questions, make your comments, join in, just put them in the comments on Facebook because we are monitoring it all the way through the evening. So let me introduce you to our panel tonight. Jude Smallwood, textiles and sewing teacher. She's got knowledge about sewing and garment making, pattern drafting and knitting. Hi, Jude.
Hi, Peg.
Hi. Great to have you here. We've also got Eleanor Thompson. Hi, Eleanor.
Hi, Peg.
Hi. Home dressmaker, crafter, pattern tester, sample maker, based in Guiseley. An amazing outfit that you've got behind you there to show us, which is fab. We've got Sally Cook. Sally, hi Sally.
Hiya.
Hiya. She's a maker, designer and PhD student at Nottingham Trent University, looking at how people learn basic sewing skills. She's a lifelong sewer. I have to be careful with that because it looks like sewer, where the way it's written at my end. A lifelong sewer based in Headingley. And we also have Dawn Ward with us. Dawn, hi Dawn.
Hi.
Hi, Dawn, a fashion designer and costume maker with ages of elegance, a sewing tutor at Fabrication Crafts, everything from 18th century gowns to flying monkeys and corsets. My goodness, if that doesn't set you on fire, I don't know what will. I'm Peg Alexander, journalist and presenter and event host who works a lot with Zero Waste Leeds, but I'm also a bit of a sewer as well myself, or a sewer, whichever way you want to pronounce it. And actually, I went to one of the UK's top fashion colleges, that is the truth, and trained to be a fashion designer. And one of a bit of a confession, right? I have one A level. Guess what it's in, everybody?
Sewing.
Sewing, yes, it's my only A level that I have is actually in sewing. So right, but I'm not doing any top tips or anything like that tonight, not at all, unless I can think of something. But let's kick off, right? We're going to start by going round and getting some top tips from you all. So right, I'm just going to go with the order you appear on my screen here. Okay, so oh, and just to say, sorry, we may well be joined by Julia Roebuck. I know she's planning to join us, so when she comes in, Julia established Upcycle Fashion in 2010, and she works with communities, schools and businesses to develop projects to extend the useful life of textiles using community circularity. And actually, Julia yesterday took over the Zero Waste Leeds Instagram page as well for the day, which was really, really very cool. So let's get back to, let's start off with some top tips. We've got a few people watching her. Jenny says, I'm very excited to listen in while I do some sewing myself. Jenny, is unfortunately we can't see you for us all to have a mass sewing, but we know you're there in spirit, so we're just imagining that nobody is going to be kind of sticking needles and fingers and stuff like that, because our panelists are going to be so amazing and exciting. Let's get going. Jude, right, off to you first, because you're first on my screen. What's your top tip for sewing and being more sustainable?
So my top tip for sewing and being more sustainable is about using little swatches that you can get in fabric shops or in furniture shops. Now, I'm not advocating that you go and clear rails of these just into a basket, pretending that you might want to buy some furniture with these. But what you can do after you've got these, for checking whether it's suitable in your home, is you can sew these together, fill them with some lavender, pop a little ribbon on. You've always got oddments of buttons that you usually have on clothes, spare buttons. Then you can pop those on, stitch around the outside, and you've got a lovely little lavender bag. Now I've made it into a heart shape, so any of the bits that I've cut off, I pop them in a scrap bag, and then I use those as stuffing later for anything that I'm making, such as like little soft toys or anything like that. So that's my top tip for you.
Oh, brilliant. Do you stick them under your pillow to help you sleep?
I do. This one actually at the moment is hung just off the corner of my bed though, and I keep scrunching it every so often when I feel a little bit stressed, which is a lot of the time at the moment. So probably like everybody though.
Yeah, because sleep and lockdown don't match really, do they? They're not a partnership, are they? Brilliant. Thanks, Jude. That was ace. Sally, you're next. Come on, top tips.
Well, so my top tip is I've been repurposing some t-shirts and other things, and I'm using my scraps to make, I don't know if you can see that, you probably can't see the stitching, but to make makeup removal pads. So this is just 3 layers of t-shirt fabric zigzagged around the edge on a sewing machine. And yeah, it works just as well, but it means that you're not using kind of single use cotton items, which also come in plastic bags. So yeah, that's my top tip. And actually, after I made these, I realized if I made them square, there wasn't any waste. I made them round just because the ones I normally use are round. And then I suddenly thought, there you go.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And the square's great as well. Tell you what else is really good about those is because I use reusable ones, but because they're white, they get really mucky and it's all a bit off-putting. So doing them as a dark colour actually is a really good idea.
They don't look as pretty when they're clean, but they're much more practical.
Brilliant, great. Well, we've got makeup pads, we've got lavender love hearts. Dawn, what are you giving us?
Well, my little tip is when you finally decide whatever you've got can't be worn anymore, you turn it into racks for doing the dusting with, etc. Cut off your buttons, cut off the zips, cut off the ribbons, so that you've always got a little stash to then repair and fix. So if you do a little love out of swatches, you've got a ribbon and buttons already. The zip breaks, you've always got another one in the pile of stuff that we all don't have lying around. And yeah, just kind of keep all those odd little bits and pieces like that. It's always really useful. My button tin goes back, God, decades of just stuff. It's what I've always done, what my mum did, what my grandma did. So I always have a tin of buttons.
What else have you got as well as the button tin? I mean, you were saying there's zips.
Buttons, bits of ribbon. Even if you kind of, things like the ribbons from the hanging loop ribbons you get on some clothing, cut those off, save them, you never know. And then you can also then add them as hanging loops to things that don't have hanging loops. That kind of stuff. So just all the odd little bits of lace trim that you might have on it, all those extra little bits of notions that actually do last forever and don't break down, where you say with your actual garments kind of seen its last legs.
Do you know what? When I was younger, they used to always say carry some knicker elastic with you in case.
Yeah, you never know.
You never know.
Like a pair of tights always makes a fan belt.
Well, yeah, tights do. But
that's how we were brought up.
Dawn and Eleanor, you both nodded at that, right? That is true. That is what we used to be told, right?
Yeah.
So
we got a spare pair of tights in the car.
Yeah, get the elastic. Yeah. And even carry that with you. Julia's just coming in and joining us. We'll give her a sec. Eleanor, hi Julia, we'll come and meet you in a minute. But Eleanor, let's go to you next.
I think just to learn some basic mending techniques, and that it doesn't have to look great, because if you're just wearing things around the house but you're making them last a bit longer and you're learning along the way, then that's a good thing.
What sort of things would you suggest people can kind of mend then?
Well, like keeping scraps of denim, if you've made something or from a pair that's worn out, keeping the decent bits so you can use them to patch another pair. I always keep just a small bundle of denim leftovers in my fabric box, so I've always got a bit that at least roughly matches. Or just use something colourful and make it fun if you can't make it match.
Yeah, perfect. Or make a thing out of it, as I say, absolutely. Make a thing out of it. Brilliant, thank you. So Julia, are you ready for us to say hello to you?
I am. I'm so sorry that I'm late. A meeting just ran over.
That's okay. Julia established Upcycle Fashion in 2010. Julia, we're giving our top tips here for how to be more sustainable. Give us yours.
Top tips. Okay, so specifically sewing. So specifically sewing, my top tip, and I'm sorry if somebody's already said it, is to learn how to sew elastic into clothing, because it can completely change the shape of it. It can turn a baggy dress into a fitted dress. It can turn a hemline into a more tight kind of tulip tucked skirt hemline. You can ruche some straps with it. You can just make everything fit a little bit better with some elastic. So yeah, elastic's mine.
Wow, elastic's getting a good write up tonight, isn't it? Elastic.
Who else said elastic?
Anything fit. Thank goodness for elastic. It's doing the business tonight. So we have got quite a few people watching us, which is absolutely brilliant. Please do get your questions in, start making comments, start asking questions, asking for any advice. Sally, do you want to just show us your little nifty camera that you've got? So,
well, yes, I have the ability to show you. Oops, sorry.
Tell you what. We'll come back. We'll come back to you. Get it going. We'll come. Oh, here we go. Wait a minute. Let's go back.
There we go. So I have my hands here in this live session. So if there's anything we need to demonstrate, I can try and do that with the things that I've got around me.
Wow, perfect. Thank you very much. So we can even try and do that as well. Let's have a look at some of the questions that we had sent in advance. Okay, we had a couple of questions. Let me start with this one. This comes from Helen, who wanted to know about any suggestions and ideas about the affordability of making basics such as underwear, vest tops, etc. She says the price differential is making and buying these things is quite high, especially as these are items that need to be bought more often than outerwear. So any suggestions we've got there? Basics, your vest tops, your underwear, any suggestions?
Well, this sparked off quite a conversation between us all when it first came in. And I think I might have declared Eleanor the queen of the queen of undies.
I'm prepared.
I've ever done.
So one thing that you can find if you're trying to make underwear is that the extra bits like the fastenings can be really expensive. So either you can, like with bra sliders and the rings and sliders on the straps, like here's one we made earlier, the slidey bits. You can,
hold it up.
If you've got a bra that's worn out and all the rest of it's fallen apart, then keep those because they're about the most expensive bit. So the sliders and the rings, sometimes the fastenings as well, because they can be quite tricky to get hold of. But if you can save them from an old bra, that's quite useful. And then finding underwear patterns that don't need much in the way of fancy elastics and things. So this might take up most of the screen. My big girl pants, they're really, really comfortable. There's no elastic in them. It's just strips of fabric for the waist and around the legs. They don't use, well, it depends what size you are. For me, they don't use a lot of fabric and they're fun and really quick to make and ridiculously comfortable to wear. So it's just finding a pattern that suits you that you can make quickly from maybe bits. So I'll often use things left from making a t-shirt. So I end up with matching sets. Finding simple things that you can make quickly, that you can batch cut them, maybe cut out 5 pairs at a time and then sew them all up at once. And it doesn't have to be complicated. But it's a lot of fun as well.
Great. Brilliant, thank you. Just to say, we've got some comments on here. Olivia says that this is wonderful, loving the tips. And that was even before we started talking about knickers. So yeah, Olivia, thank you for that. I think I might have gone out on my connection there, I'm afraid to say. Oh gosh, sorry, my connection's going in and out tonight, which is not good. Thank you. I was just saying we've got some nice comments there, and that's before we started talking about knickers. But Olivia does say, where can we find the patterns? Are there any recommendations on or websites or books for knicker patterns?
Should we post some links? Should we put some links on the page that people can look at afterwards rather than list?
That's probably an idea, yeah.
You had a couple of really good ones, I think, that looked quite difficult to sew. So yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say another thing that you could do as well if you've got an old pair of knickers, because I haven't made underwear and things like that, but often if I've got an old top or something like that I really like, I will unpick it all, take it all apart and draw around the pieces onto some greaseproof paper or tracing paper or something like that. And then you can kind of make your own pattern as long as you've got something that you know sort of fits you. And if you've unpicked it and taken it apart, then that should have like the seam allowances popped in as well. So if you can just make a note of what the seam allowances are. Usually on a commercial garment, it'd be probably something between maybe 0.5 to a centimetre, something like that. But on homemade clothes, it's usually 1.5. But as long as you know what the seam allowance is, you could stitch it at the same amount. So that's just one thing that I do.
Could you do that with knickers as well if you've got a pair that fit you really well?
Yeah.
Knickers and bras.
Yeah.
Bras, I probably struggle because there's lots of different parts on that. But I think is after our conversation about underwear, you start going to your knicker drawer. Well, I do start going to my knicker drawer and studying what's in my knicker drawer and thinking, oh, there's only like 3 pieces to the majority of these knickers. There's a front bit, there's a back bit, and then there's a gusset, and that's your lot really. So with an unpicker, you can kind of whip up through the overlocking quite quickly. Not to a new pair though. Don't do it to a new pair.
Just those horrible grey ones that have been washed far too many times.
Yeah.
You need to make sure your fabric will stretch enough and recover enough. That's probably the main thing to look out for, that they won't go saggy.
Yes.
And also another tip is if you are putting trim and things on them, make sure you put the stretch in when you put the trim on. Otherwise, you won't get your legs through it. So if you put trim on first, but don't put the stretch, when you come to move it, you won't get a leg through. That's a definite top tip that we've all done at some point.
Brilliant. What about vests? Any other suggestions on vests?
Pretty much the same, really. I mean, anything that you've got, if you want to reuse, always take a pattern from it. Always take a pattern from it because you know it's you, and it works. And yeah, I mean, they're pretty much made in the same way as well. It's just the front, the back, and then an edge trim around it. Do learn how your stretch stitch works on your sewing machine if you are going to have a go. Don't do anything too ambitious unless you've learned how to do a stretch stitch as well. I've put a bit of a zig in something, otherwise you kind of come unstuck. But the more you're confident on sewing, the better you'll be, basically. It's not a basic step, it's a slightly more advanced way of making the stretch stuff.
Do you still get that elastic that's like cotton threads that you can then use on your sewing machine and sew with that? Does that still exist?
Yeah.
Shearing elastic, yeah, that's more done for things like smocking and stuff like that, rather than underwear, really. You know, slightly more substantial.
Oh, here we go. Go on, Eleanor, show us there. Oh, you need to speak and then the camera will go to...
Right, okay. So you have to stretch it slightly as you put it on the bobbin. It's kind of weird stuff. So you put regular thread in the top and then the elastic in the bobbin. But you have to wind it by hand generally. So it's a slow and mindful task. And then that just gives you a bit of ping, a bit of shaping and things.
Used a lot in kids' dresses in the 70s. I think you remember having a lot of kind of sheared things made out of scraps of like things that had been like my mum's skirts or dresses. Once they'd worn out, they'd get made into kids' clothes, and they were often just stitched around with shearing elastic and some scraps.
Yeah, often they're contrasting colours, weren't it? You know,
Yeah.
a dress with some blue little zigzags or something. Josie on Facebook saying she loves the tips. She says this is going back to your button box, I think, Dawn was saying you can also have a box of lovely haberdashery goodies, great for mending or making.
Always save a bra bits.
Yeah, save your bra bits. If you're going to only take away one thing on this, it's save your bra bits and save your knicker.
They're really difficult to get hold of.
We're getting to the real core of things here, quite frankly, aren't we? Definitely. Suzanne's been on. She says, what's the simplest thing I could make without a sewing machine that would build confidence? What a great question.
It's a great question.
I mean, you can make a skirt, you can make cushions. You don't need a sewing machine to sew. You know, we sewed for many hundreds of years before the machine was invented. If I do costumes quite often, because I do a lot of work for museums, it's all made by hand. So I've handmade 18th century gowns, I've handmade Tudor doublets, all completely by hand. And quite often I don't use a machine at all. I have many different sewing machines and I rarely thread them up and use them. I do make a lot of stuff by hand because it's quicker. I can control it easier. I can put shape in easier. You know, even if it's a really complicated piece. So just have a go. I mean, to build your confidence, have a go. Just turning some hems up first, or make a bag, make a little tote bag, just so you can practice sewing in a straight line and doing backstitch basically, or tiny running stitch.
I was going to ask you about that. If you're sewing by hand, what stitch do you recommend? Do you recommend a backstitch or a running stitch?
Most of my, again, for centuries, just a very simple running stitch was used, but it's a teeny running stitch. You know, shirts were made with something like 25 stitches to the inch, and they withstood lots of washing and stuff. So 18th century shirts are made with many, and I can sew to that amount. But you use a number 9 betweens needle, and you can just stab in, stab. You don't do that kind of running stitch. You do a stab in, stab out, stab in, stab out stitch. And if you're going to
hold the fabric and you
so you're handing manipulating. I mean, again, one of the tools I have here, I've got an 18th century sewing clamp because I collect old tools, and that would be used as your extra pair of hands. You would clip it to a table, clip the shirt in one bit, and then you would have that tension on it to kind of sew as well. So and I've used that when I don't use bobbins and thimbles or anything, but I will use the sewing clamp if I sew, and they're really, really strong seams, and it's getting the right thread for what you're doing as well, so that it is strong enough. It holds the same. So like a linen shirt, if I'm hand sewing, I use a linen thread, so it's kind of got the same weave consistency as well, so it becomes part of that garment really. So you're literally just moving a couple of threads apart while you're sewing. But yeah, just a little simple running stitch. Many of those giant 18th century gowns you see in museums are just really quite rough running stitches.
wow.
Really quite, if I made something to that state and gave it to a client, they'd hand it straight back, to be fair, because they're quite bad, some of them. But yeah, and I've sewn gentlemen's coats, really big wool coats and stuff like that by hand completely. So you don't need a sewing machine to sew. That's just a more industrial process.
So Eleanor, you've been nodding along there. Have you got any suggestions of what's the easiest thing for Suzanne to start with without a sewing machine?
I've got a thought.
Yeah, go on then, Sally, go on.
Well, I was just thinking about, when I was a teenager, when I was learning to sew, I did used to hand sew things, although I had a kind of my grandmother's old kind of hand wound Singer machine, which is what I first learned to sew on. But yeah, I used to sew things by hand sometimes. So just basic shirt, like a sleeveless top, just out of a lightweight cotton, like a shirt cotton or a kind of sheet type cotton. And you can kind of hand sew those kind of things. They don't have enormous seams, just 2 shoulders and 2 side seams, maybe a dart depending on kind of how wide it is. But you could find a relatively simple pattern and do that kind of thing with your hands. The other thing, and I think Dawn will probably tell me that this is not the right way to do it possibly, but I used to sew things by doing French seams, which you end up sewing them twice, which means that the edges are encased. But I used to do that by just doing a running stitch, quite a small one, not a tiny one, then trimming the edges and then doing the second seam. And because it was stitched twice, it didn't.
You've got extra strength there. Or, I always use a French seam. I don't like an overlocker. So the fact that you did it by hand, many points, there's no telling off there.
But just like a little silk camisole or something like that, where you need literally a couple of seams and some straps.
And it doesn't take long at all.
And you can unpick it if it goes wrong and make it into something else later. I mean, it's worth giving it a go.
Jude, what do you start off with your students with then?
We usually start off with fleece cushions for the year 7. So when they come in, we don't start them on the sewing machine at all. We start them with hand skills. So we show them a running stitch and then a back stitch. And usually we'll use felt, because felt is it's a bonded fibre, so it's not woven, so it doesn't fray. and it doesn't run, so it's not a knitted fibre either. So they can cut it out and they don't have to worry about finishing any of the edges. So we used to do it based on animals so that we could get them really engaged in it to start off with, but then with the curriculum change, and we had to take it into a design movement, so we did it on the menders design movement. So it was all about sort of geometric shapes and things like that. So they'd cut out the felt shape and then they'd either use backstitch or running stitch to apply the felt shape onto the fleece fabric, and then they'd just do like a simple envelope back cushion. So they'd do a tiny bit of machine stitching, but it was literally just stitching straight down the sides to form the envelope back cushion, really. So something like that's dead easy to do. The other thing that I was kind of just thinking was, you could, if you just wanted to practice your skills, you could make little like pattern weights. So they're a bit like that sort of shape. We used to do these at a previous school that I was at, and we made like juggling balls, and they did hand stitching in that. So it's basically getting a piece of fabric and stitching down a couple of sides, and then opening it and then stitching it so that it makes a sort of a triangle shape. It's difficult to kind of show without going through the whole process, which I do at school, but that's just one thing that you could very simply hand stitch it, and it wouldn't be too much of a problem. You know, if your stitches were a little bit big, I'd probably use a back stitch to make sure that it was secure, because if you're making pattern weights, you probably want to put something like lentils or rice or something like that in to weigh it down.
So just in case there is anyone watching who doesn't know what a back stitch is.
Just in case there is anybody, is Sally ready to do a quick back stitch?
Yeah, I can do a quick back stitch.
Yeah.
So I've got a piece of fabric here, which hopefully you can see. I've got white thread. I've got a knot in the end of my thread. So I'm just coming through from the back side. And then a back stitch. Maybe I'll do a really big stitch so you can see. You put your needle in and then out again. And then once you've pulled that through, you take your needle back. Let me get it a bit closer. Take your needle back to the last visible stitch, and then come up again the same distance the other side. So I don't know how easy that is to see.
Really easy.
What you end up with is a continuous line of stitches. You'd do them much smaller if you were trying to hold something together. I'm doing them big so that you can see them on the camera. So go back each time to the last visible stitch and out again. And you'll find, so on the top side, you have a continuous line of stitching. On the bottom side, your stitches overlap, but I can't get that in the right place. There we go. But that's what makes it a really strong stitch for a seam. So like a side seam on a garment, you probably do them maybe a half that size, a third of that size. But yeah, so you just keep going. I can't get my camera in the right place. Just keep going back and up and back to where you can see the stitches, and just try and stay in a straight enough line. So there you go. That's your back.
Julia, have you got anything to add in about what you think is the easiest thing to?
Yeah, well, I was thinking, just when Jude was saying about the envelope cushions, and that, you know, so no, you don't need to worry about putting zips in or buttons and buttonholes for fastening. You can just do your envelope back and some straight edges. But what I like to do with my kind of upcycling hat on is to make hot water bottle covers out of old fleece jumpers or knitted jumpers, but as long as you've got your edges. And again, just make an envelope cushion. Use your hot water bottle as a template, but just make a cushion cover for it as if you would do a cushion, but just in the shape of a hot water bottle. And they're really practical and lovely thing. You can even give them as gifts, and especially around Christmas time, if you get some festive fleece, that's a good one to do. And that can all be hand sewn.
But they're also
thinking that lovely present, not a lovely present to hand sew that.
But they're also all things that you can reuse fabric to make. So things like water bottle covers or, you know, underwear we've been talking about. They're all quite small, relatively small pieces of fabric. So there's loads of opportunity for reusing stuff you've already got as well.
Eleanor, have you got anything to throw in your suggestion for the easiest thing?
Things like pin cushions and needle cases. They're really useful to have if you're going to be sewing, and they're small and you can make them from odd little bits of felt or whatever you've got around.
Oh, go on,
You
Julia.
put a little bit of elastic on so it goes on your wrist. And this is a ready-made one that you can then wear like that. It goes on. Or little lavender bags, Christmas decorations, things that you can make that don't take too long, so you're not discouraged, but you can have fun with them.
Yeah, just on that, just as you said that, Eleanor, these are the ones that I hang up at workshops, so I've got little hoops on them. But yeah, this is the one that I have in my bedroom because my other half gets a bit annoyed if he steps on a needle. So I have it strategically placed so that if I spot a needle on the floor, I can whip it up and put it on my back of my pincushion. So
I thought you were going to say something else then. Moving on, we've got another great question on Facebook. This has come from Jenny. She says her 7-year-old daughter Elizabeth is watching with her. So hello, Elizabeth. Everybody
Elizabeth.
say hello to Elizabeth.
Oh, Elizabeth.
And she would like ideas on sewing things for her real dogs. She's been learning to sew and can now use the pedal herself for huge progress. Proud mummy. Oh, that's great.
Right.
Yeah, she could make a little bandana for it. There's little kind of dribble bib type things. They're really cute in really like fun fabrics for it. You know, which help with lots of dog meal as well. But they're really cute.
Any other suggestions?
She could make some little soft toys for dogs, because if the dogs are anything like my friend's dogs, they tend to chew through and completely destroy soft toys in no time at all. So if you kind of get maybe a little bit of fleece fabric, or you've got an old fleece jumper or something like that, you get that and then stuff it with some stuff and just make sure it's nothing that the dog's gonna like choke on. Like to be fair, they usually spit it out anyway. But that's quite kind of creative thing, making, if you cut out like a little bone shape or something like that, you can make those.
Yeah, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah. What about a little dog outfit? How is that quite a hard thing to actually make? I saw one the other day and it had arms. Can you believe it had actual proper arms on it? Because I have big serious dog envy, and given that all we do is go for a walk these days.
I mean, the simplest one would be like a little blanket with Velcro around the middle.
Yeah.
There were some hilarious ones on the sewing bee they made from old, I don't know if it was from old tents or jewels. They were just so fun.
I think Dawn's cat isn't liking this conversation.
There was no cat things we could do.
Too much dog talk, I think, is what we're being told now. So yeah, so Eleanor, just the little sort of out, you know, the little jackets, just basically make it as a, would you make it just as a square and then just put the Velcro?
Yeah, or you could do a rectangle and just round off the corners a bit and then put some sort of softish.
Yeah, I mean something like a little warm dog coat to kind of pop on when they go out. Again, you know, an old jumper underneath to line it, and a little bit of waterproof fabric on top or something. You don't need to kind of measure them in quite the same way, because again, if you're making dog clothes, she says, having done it for projects, you do kind of need to know the breed and the measurement to measure them in the way you would do a human. Otherwise, you can get the same issues of, you know, rubbing and chafing and stuff like that. But something like a little, just like a little t-shirt, almost like a cross shape, which would just then Velcro underneath with a little dog coat, would be really cute. You know, really a really nice, simple little project to do for her as well.
Oh, lovely. Well, Jenny and Mum's been on. She said, you've made her day. Thank you. Oh, Elizabeth, we're just so impressed that you know how to use the sewing machine already. I think we should just...
Definitely.
Very impressive indeed as well. Nat also said, thank you for the demonstration, Sally. She enjoyed that as well. We've got another question. Let me go and have a look to this question that came in advance. This is from Beth. She says she's a final year student studying textile design, and as citizens and sustainable designers in Leeds, how do you think we can educate individuals who may not have any idea of the destroying effects of fast fashion? So I know that's not quite our sewing Q&A, but any thoughts about that?
I do. Yeah, I think it's a really important question, and I think it's something that we do really need to be engaging people with the issues, but in a way that makes it fun and in a way that makes people feel empowered to take action to create change. So in the enormity of the problem, I think people can sometimes feel a bit lost, and I think it's really important that we break it down. And the reason that I really passionately believe in Leeds Fashion Futures is that it's really about Leeds, it's about local action, and it's about bringing real examples of sustainability out into people's lives and making them feel empowered. So I think you know, a big kind of a platform, everybody can find their own place within it, but if you're actively trying to run a kind of citizen campaign, I think it's about making it and again, hopefully as we move out of COVID, it's hard to do it online when so many of these skills and resources rely on, you know, physical tactile textiles and observations and learning and practice by doing and being in a community and be inspired for collective action. And I think that as we move out of it, I think it would be great to have sorry, I can't remember the name of the girl that asked the question, Peg.
It was Beth.
Yeah. Beth, what I think you should do is write a bit of an action plan for the kind of events that you would want to go to. So imagine your favorite, if you were to turn up at a clothes swapping event or a clothes bank or a pop-up charity shop event, what would you want that to look like? How would you want it to make you feel? What would make you feel excited? What would make you tell all your friends about it? And then make that happen. And seek out resources through Leeds Fashion Futures of ways that, you know, linking in people and projects and places within your local community. Have a bit of a search for something online if you can't find anything that's happening, or a group that you can tag into online, with the ultimate ambition of moving into a physical space in the summer and beyond. Get something going yourself and get it started. I think we need the fashion revolution to be fun and engaging and social, and all the things that just sitting on your phone and shopping like this isn't. We need to give people a better alternative, and that's all about engagement and experience and community and skills.
Right. And Jenny says she completely agrees with you, Julia. She says that shaming and guilting people will never inspire change. Yeah, we need places where we can all sit and sew, even more places. I mean, obviously fabrication, that's one place done, can't they? People can come down and sew when you're open.
I'm kind of already looking to see when we can start teaching again. I think it's from the end of May, not 100% sure, because we can't do it with the normal education thing, it's a separate issue. But yeah, I'm working on the new class ideas at the moment. But I think it is, I mean, that's the whole basis around this project, isn't it? And we all know that the moment that shops open, hopefully the 12th of April, it won't be queues outside charity shops or independents like ours. It'll be queues outside somewhere like Primark. And I think it's really important, not to kind of guilt and things. And those businesses, they employ people, they employ around the world, things like that. So it's not about one or the other. It's about having the whole thing in balance. So not to say that shouldn't happen and only this should. It's the whole holistic kind of way that we have to start looking at the world again. You know, and the kind of fast fashion thing, it's something that's come about in the last 25 years, really. It didn't exist when I was younger, and it's a way of looking at how we put that within a modern economy, as well as a whole kind. I mean, I speak as a designer who makes new, and it might be old-fashioned offcuts and stuff like that. So if someone says, I'm never buying clothes for, or anything for a year, then that puts myself and all my makers out of business, So it's this kind of dichotomy that we have the whole time about how you do one thing whilst balancing it with something else, and this whole kind of high street demise about that whole fast fashion and stuff, but it then rocks the economy and it puts people out of work. So It's not one or the other. It has to be done in balance and within people's own economic kind of circles as well. And, you know, that whole thing. But
understanding.
there's no one answer. You know, it's like with anything. You can only do what you can do. You can't change the world completely. You can only change your bit of the world. You know, look at how you approach stuff, whether it's food or clothing or plastic or, you know, walking rather than driving or anything like that, really. And just
Sally, did you want to come in?
Yeah, well, I think there's also something about recognizing that there's more than one way to do fashion, because actually once the clothes leave the shop, fashion is really made by how we all use it, how we wear it. That's how fashion is seen out there in the world. So we do have some, I don't know, there's an opportunity, I suppose, to change that. If you want things to look different, you can dress differently. You can start to try making your own things and be prepared to go out in them and share your ideas with other people. And you know, we can make fashion as much as you know, as much as the industry can make fashion. In fact, the fashion industry has always been really influenced by, well, in the last kind of 50 years, has been really influenced by street style, by what actually goes on out there in the street. So we, you know, that's for us to change if we want to.
Yeah, and I would make a plea for, you know, for people to do what they want to do, because sometimes I just think, oh, everyone looks the same these days. Do you know what I mean? I hate to say this, but especially women, I just think, you know, they all look the same. Can we just, I love it when people look, you know, different and they've got their own style and their own look, and that's what they go for, rather than.
It does take a bit of confidence to, you know, wear something that's different or something that you've made yourself. But the more people are prepared to do that, then, you know, certainly within like a group of friends or whatever, then the more it can kind of gather pace.
Absolutely. We've got another really good question here on Facebook from Josie. She says, where do you get the inspiration for what you make? Who wants to go first with that one? And also she's wondering if anyone's learned any new skills lately.
I'm constantly learning. The day I stop learning something is the day I give up. My latest thing, I'm learning how to make fabric and sort flowers. That's something I want to do for a long time. So I've got some special French millinery tools on their way to practice with. But my inspiration comes because I do costume. It comes from many different centuries and putting a different sleeve or a tweak here or there, but quite often, and I know a lot of designers say this, but we all, you know, outside of the field, people laugh. It's like the fabric tells me what it wants to be quite often. And if I try and make it into something that it doesn't want to be, it doesn't work. That always sounds completely bizarre. But you all know what I mean, don't you? If you try and make it into what it doesn't want to be, it won't happen. It'll go wrong. You'll put the sleeve in upside down. It just won't work. So I'll quite often just stand with a piece of fabric pinned to a dummy and then just tweak it around and just see how it falls. And that's where, you know, where my inspiration style comes from, rather than deciding that I'm going to make this today. Or I don't, if I do a collection, I don't sketch at all. I don't do mood boards. I don't do anything. I literally just make it.
You're just going straight to it.
I just go straight in, you know, say pin it on the dummy, look at the fabric, cut something out, tweak it, sort it. I rarely make twirls either. I just go for it.
Blimey, you're just straight into it. Eleanor, you're nodding a lot. What about yourself? Where do you get your inspiration?
Before lockdown, I had a very typical pattern. If I went into Leeds, there'd be certain shops I go and look around for ideas, and then I'd hit the fabric shops and see what I could find. And often I couldn't match things up, but I'd find something that would just spark an idea. And I have a few patterns that I make frequently. So this top, I've made probably 6 or 8 of them because it fits and it's comfortable, and I can make it in about half an hour. And the same with this cardigan. I think this is the second one I've made, so the pattern was already cut out, but then you can use just completely different fabric. So the previous one was in some 1970s really quite odd synthetic fabric that my granny had given me, so you wouldn't really know it was the same pattern as this one.
I love that as a tip. That's really great. If you've got something that suits you and fits you, just keep making it, but with a totally different look. Yeah. Have you learned any new skills recently?
I've learned how to put leggings in, how to put pockets in the side of leggings, which was really good. Because I run a lot, so I live in leggings. So having pockets in the side is quite handy.
Who else an inspiration?
I think I definitely agree with Dawn in terms of the fabric, but I tend to just troll around a charity shop when they're open. I volunteer at a charity shop, and I love it's something will just come in, and whether it's a really old tartan or a jacket with a funky lining, there'll just be something about it that I can just immediately see it being something else, or something that I think would look great with something that I already own. So a charity shop troll is my inspiration.
Yeah, I'm the same. I buy a lot of fabric secondhand in charity shops or from scrap in Leeds, which is really good. I think the most recent, but I get really influenced by things that I see other people wearing. So I saw somebody wearing it was kind of a punk style pinafore dress that was made out of a kind of suiting, so a pinstripe thing, and I saw them somewhere and I just thought, oh, that's interesting. And then I came across some similar fabric in scrap and thought, right, I'll make one of them then. Haven't got it here to show you, but yes. So yeah, combination of being inspired by fabric and seeing things on other people and thinking, oh, that's good.
Yeah, and Jude?
I think I'm probably similar in that I'll look at a piece of fabric and I'll think, oh, that'll make a really nice sweatshirt, or that'll make really nice PJs or something like that. So I like the pattern in the fabric, and that appeals to me. And a bit like Eleanor, if I find a particular sort of type of fabric, like a sweatshirt fabric that I like the pattern on, I've got a go-to pattern that I've self-drafted from one of my other jumpers that I had that I really like the fit on. And if you make it up in different fabrics and maybe shorten it or lengthen it into a dress, shorten the sleeves or things like that, it can look very different. But also a little bit like Sally, and that I'll see a picture of somebody wearing something and I'll start mentally deconstructing that garment in my mind, thinking, right, okay, so how's that fastening? How's that been put together? What layers are on that? Where's the seams and things like that? And I'll think, well, I don't automatically go to, well, where have they got that from, or which shop is that from? It'll be well, I think I can make that with, if I get that bit of fabric and I get that bit of trim, then I think I can make it up. So I like that challenge of looking at something and thinking, well, how has that actually been constructed? Really, it does take me a long time to get around to finishing things off, though. I get like inspired by something, think, oh yes, let's do that, and then yeah, it gets to a point and I really have to force myself to finish off before I flit off to something else. But I think that's something that a lot of makers experience, really. I see a lot of nods there.
It's a slow process, isn't it? And it can take a long time.
Sally, do you want to talk us just very briefly through that whole thing about if you found something, say in a charity shop or something that is right, but the fabric's not right or whatever, about how to unpick something so that you can copy the pattern to remake it in something else?
Yes. Well, so I've got my hand camera here just to show you. This is because we had a conversation before on here about how to unpick seams. So just quickly, how to do it. This is just a stitched seam that's been finished at both ends with an unpicker tool, which is my favorite tool. I think I've already expressed that on here.
You have told me off for calling it a stitch ripper as well, didn't you?
Well, no, I didn't tell you off, I just said I didn't like the term. It is what it's called, it's a stitch ripper. But you don't really want to be ripping anything with it. So all you need to do is unpick every, I don't know, 4th or 5th stitch, maybe not even that. So you just unpick them going that way. And that means that if you go to the other side, you can just find where you've loosened it and it just pulls out like that. You end up with loads of bits. So you need to capture those. But it's relatively quick to unpick seams. On most kind of shop bought garments, they'll be overlocked on the edges. sometimes those seams are overlocked together, so you get multiple seams. But again, you can put your stitch ripper just inside those loops, and if you're careful, you can just run it along and cut them all at once, and then do what I've just done to the kind of the line of stitching that you've got left. So it's relatively easy to take things apart if you've got one of these, which is just, you know, it's the most valuable tool a sewer can have.
Brilliant, thank you, thanks for that. And just to say, I mean, there is that option always that if you've got something and it's in the wrong fabric or whatever, that you can do that, take it apart and then literally iron it and then just cut round it. I mean, especially, but if you've had to cut off the seam allowance, you might need to add that on, but you know, just cut round it to actually make it again in something else, deconstruct it to remake it. I do love that idea of something that you really like, being able to make it in different fabric. So we've only got a few minutes left. Let's just go to another question that we've got here, which was about your own personal relationships with clothes. Any thoughts, or, you know, when the question was, has that evolved over time?
Oh goodness, yes. Yes, and I think having thought a lot more about the impact of clothing, partly because it's something that I am researching, it's really changed. I've always made clothes, I've always sewn clothes, but I'm looking at them completely differently now as what they could be in the future as well as what they are now. So I'm seeing them as much less fixed as the thing they currently are. And I've been doing a lot of repurposing of things. So I don't know if you can see this. It's a blouse. It's a copy of one that I got that I really like, that's really comfortable. But this is actually made out of a men's shirt. So it's kind of, this is its third life. So my husband always buys his work, used to buy his work shirts from charity shops. So it was a charity shop man's shirt that my husband used to wear. When he finally decided it was kind of too grotty around the edges to carry on wearing, I kind of cut it up and made it into something else. And I'm doing quite a lot of that, which is, yeah, I mean, it's a process of learning, because you can't just lay the fabric out and cut out the pieces. But, you know, some of it's halfway there already. So that's something that I've done much more of recently.
Julia, you've been nodding along.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think looking for those details and keeping those embellishments and, you know, kind of like continuation of the story. And again, what we were saying earlier, like a lot of the time the fabric will tell you what it wants to do and the piece and the features that you want to keep on it. So sometimes just upcycling is a really kind of easy win in a way, you know, just by turning something upside down or back to front or cutting a bit off and putting a bit on. And you realize as well, like the shapes, the more you deconstruct, the more you learn about construction. So, you know, the shapes that are in armhole, you know, the seams and the ways that you cut the armholes are going to be very similar maybe to the way that you cut trousers and shorts, and repurposing for different placement and just having fun, it's play, you know, it's play, and that's how humans learn. So
I've got a tip there actually, which is that if you are a bit worried about sleeves, just go sleeveless. It's loads easier. Get some, what's that stuff called that oh, do you know that sort of bias binding stuff? Yeah, do they still use that? Yeah, just do that if you're worried about your sleeves. Yeah. Did any of you follow that Sam Barsky on Instagram? No. He's brilliant. He's a knitter, right? And he knits jumpers of everywhere that he goes in the world. And then he takes the photographs. So I first came across him on the family quiz one night, was where is Sam been? It was one of the quiz rounds, right? Was the pictures of his jumper. And none of them have sleeves. So I don't know if it's just because he finds them difficult or if they just take too long.
Also, you could just cut something with a T-shape and then you've got a sleeve already built in.
Yeah, what, your batwing sleeves?
Well, you can just cut it with an actual T-shape. Again, early clothing, that's what it was done. Cut it like that, straight down, give a bit of a gather there. But, you know, your sleeves all bit, you literally just stitch around there. You can cut it out. So you would actually put it on the fold of the fabric as well. So you literally have, all you do is cut that two sides out, stitch along underarm and down, and you've got a really simple garment. Little
Yeah.
slit at the top. Really simple.
Or as you say, the bat wings literally just.
You do that way. That's because you're an early 80s girl, isn't it?
I know. I'm showing my age. I know. I used to. I loved a bat wing.
Yeah. Oh, I love a bat wing.
Yeah. Well, so we've got another question as well. Someone says they're scared of slippy fabric. Any advice?
Yeah. Use a fine needle. Don't use a heavy needle. Use a fine needle. And if you need to tack, I never tack. I rarely pin. But if I'm using velvet or silk or satin, I pin, I stitch, I tack my seam line in it. So it's all held together. Then you can use it on the machine. It's not going to move out of the way. It's not going to creep. If you need to, you could even use like a Teflon foot on your machine, which is a bit stickier. So it's not an easy glide foot. It's plastic basically. And it will actually grip a little better. So, and that's really useful using if you're sewing leather and stuff like that as well. It glides a little easier on the fabric. But yeah, always pin first. Go slow. Do a larger stitch. So if you do need to unpick, you're not going to mark it. So always do your longest stitch, but hand tack first, and breathe and go slowly. Always deep breath, small bounce. Don't rush it. Drive like you're going on a 20-mile-an-hour road, corner slowly, and you're there. It's fine.
So before we
waiting
finish,
for you afterwards.
oh, there you go. Yeah,
because you've earned it.
Yeah. Before we go, then, has anybody got anything else that they've brought along that we haven't showed or highlighted? Yeah, go on then, Sally.
One that I can show if I can just screen share for a moment.
Yeah.
Which is just following up from what Dawn just said about it's disappeared. Sorry, I haven't got the file. I was just going to show you something that was following on from what Dawn said about being able to sew something out of a T shape. I've got a dress. I'll see if I can find it. But,
Okay,
yeah.
you have a look and see if we can find it. Anybody else got anything they were going to show? No. Anything else that's come to mind that we haven't covered that while we've been talking you've been thinking, oh?
I think we've had a good range of questions really. For me, I would say choose the right needle and the right thread for the job. So a lot of problems you get when you sew, particularly on the machine, is using the wrong size needle. So if you're sewing pair of jeans, you need to use a heavyweight number 16, 18, even 20 sewing needle for your machine. Don't try and do a pair of jeans with a number 8 or 10 or 12, even 12, because it won't put enough force through the fabric to do the loopy bit that helps the sewing. So if you're sewing away and it's not working, it's probably because your needle's the wrong size. And conversely, if you're using a finer fabric or a silk or fine cotton, don't use a heavy needle because you can break the fibers. Yeah. And if you're sewing jersey, always use a ballpoint needle. Otherwise, again, you'll break the interlocking of the knitting, and it'll start to ladder. So always use the right thread and the right needle for the job. That's my mega top tip.
And is it still the case that you need to make sure you thread your thread in the direction of the thread? That was really
yeah. They're all peculiar to each machine as well.
But people must know what I mean. Don't cut your thread and then go to the end. You cut it and do it that way. You need to use it in the.
Finish the stitch off properly before you cut the thread. Otherwise, your last bit will come out.
And thread with your presser foot up if you're using a machine, so the tension discs are open.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Any more top tips?
I think probably just the one thing to say is that it doesn't matter how long you've been sewing, you still make mistakes and you're still very, very creative with things and fall out with garments that you are making. Doesn't matter how long. So just persevere with it, because if you're getting frustrated, put it down, go make a cup of tea, have a cream egg, something like that, and then come back to it, because you will approach it with a fresher state of mind, and then it'll probably work.
That's my confession. Sewing involves quite a lot of swearing in this household.
A little pile of balls of fabric in the corner of the room that you come back to quite a while later and start something else.
Yeah, that's where your stitch unpicker comes in, isn't it? I think in all the years that I did stuff, I don't think I ever once made a garment that didn't have at least one seam sewn the wrong way, or
Usually to your
something
left
like
sleeves.
yeah, you know, just you know, that's just how it goes, as you say. Don't get frustrated, don't give up. It's been absolutely brilliant. We've had some lovely response from people on Facebook watching. We know there'll be loads more people who will watch the replays. That's what happens with the Zero Waste Leeds stuff. We get some people live, and then we get lots and lots of people watching afterwards. So if you're watching on the replay, apologies that we haven't been able to obviously ask you your questions, but hopefully the things we have talked about have been of interest. And I know Zero Waste Leeds say they'll put the some links for things as well onto the replay. So thank you all very, very much to all of you, to Jude, to Dawn, to Sally, to Eleanor, to Julia. You've been amazing this evening. Thank you to everyone at home who's been watching as well. I'm not sure what's coming up tomorrow in the Leeds Fashion Futures Week. I'm sure there will be stuff. So just keep an eye on the Zero Waste Leeds page for the next instalments of things we're doing to make our city more sustainable. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you for asking.
Thank
I enjoyed it.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Bye.